What's up guys, welcome back to a new video. Today I've got a really exciting one for you guys. I'm going to be talking about a brand new full frame mirrorless camera, and this is the Lumix S5. So what you guys are seeing right now is some 4K 25p 422 10-bit footage coming straight out of the Lumix S5. And the lens that I've got on the camera at the moment is the 20-60mm lens. Panasonic did send me the S5 and this lens, and they are sponsoring this video. However, they asked me to go and take the camera out in a real world situation, test it out, and then share my honest thoughts with you guys on the channel. So that's what I'm going to be doing in this video. Over the last few weeks, I've been using this camera to shoot some photo and video, and so far I'm really impressed. I haven't used a camera from the Lumix line since the GH4, but that was my main video camera about 2 or 3 years ago. Recently, I took the S5 and the 20-60mm, as well as a 24-70 2.8 that Panasonic were also kind enough to loan to me to try out on a hike with my friend Amanda. I wanted to test out how the camera would perform in sort of a travel/landscape situation, because given the specs of this camera, I think that's really where it's going to come into its own. Alright, so we just started on the trail. I'm here with Amanda. Say hey. So the S5 has a lot of similarities to the S1 line in terms of like the specs and the video capabilities. The S5 has a 24.2 megapixel sensor, and this sensor has more than 14 stops of dynamic range. So I wanted to test out the dynamic range of this camera by shooting some super underexposed photos, and I was actually able to recover a ton of shadow detail. This is one of the things I'm most impressed about with this camera. Being able to recover that much detail from a photo that's almost completely black when you're looking at it in Lightroom, in the Lightroom preview, is pretty amazing. What do you reckon of this view? It's pretty spectacular, hey?
This view? Oh, no, that view.
It also has some amazing video specs, being able to record up to 4K at 60 frames per second at 422 10-bit color, all internally to the SD card. And it can also record up to 180 frames per second in full high definition. But when you are going to be moving up to those higher frame rates in 4K, so 50p and 60p, you are going to be looking at an APS-C crop.
Oof. Yo, that's actually not a bad shot right there.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think I might grab this shot real quick.
So one of the most important things to note about the S5 is its size and weight. It is much smaller and lighter than the S1, coming in at a shade over 700 grams. But it doesn't feel light and flimsy. It has a really nice weight to it. When I pulled it out of the box, it did feel really solid, like built really well. So first up, I want to talk about the camera's handling and usability. Getting my hands on the camera for the first time, I have to say, it does have a very comfortable grip. It's quite ergonomic overall. It is a little small for my hands, but my pinky doesn't slip off the grip at the bottom like it does with a lot of other compact cameras. It also has dual card slots, which is really great. One card slot is UHS 1 and the other is UHS 2. The camera body is also weather sealed. In addition to the 20 to 60mm lens that I got in the kit, they're both splash and dust resistant. They've equipped this lens with a rubber gasket at the mount and also sealing throughout the camera body and lens to help protect against dust and moisture. Being someone that does shoot outdoors a lot, I'm always at the beach, and also while I'm traveling, just being exposed to a range of different conditions, it's really nice to have that weather sealing. So one of my favorite things about this camera is actually the button layout. So they have the scroll wheel on the back, which with a little bit of digging around in the menu, I was able to set to change the ISO. Then you can use the front and rear dials on top of the camera to control your shutter speed and aperture, and you can switch these around, have them however you like. But this just makes shooting so much quicker as I barely need to move my hands around the camera to quickly reach the settings. They've also got a dedicated white balance button on top, which is awesome. And we also have this great joystick, which is super helpful when you're using that single point focus to move your focus point around really quickly. You've also got this dedicated viewfinder button, which will toggle between displaying the screen and the EVF. And of course you have that eye sensor as well. So this is great because when you're using a gimbal or maybe even holding the camera closer to your body, sometimes you can trigger that sensor and lose your LCD display. So having this button is really, really handy. So as I mentioned before, the S5 has a 5-axis in-body image stabilization, which provides up to 5 stops of stabilization with non-stabilized lenses. But when you use the OIS Lumix lenses, you get up to 6.5 stops of image stabilization. This will help you to get much sharper images when shooting at slower shutter speeds. And because you have the opportunity to use a slower shutter speed in order to get that shot, it means you can have your ISO set much lower, which means less grainy photos overall. As for the performance of the in-body image stabilization, I was able to test it out while shooting video, and I am thoroughly impressed with how it handles those little shakes and movements, which are pretty inevitable when you're shooting handheld. All the footage I shot on the hike was handheld, so let me know what you guys think of the footage in the comments below. When it comes to shooting video, personally, I think that the IBIS in the S5 actually outperforms all of the other IBIS systems that I've tried. So I want to talk about the lens now. The 20 to 60mm focal range I think is really interesting and very, very useful. I think being able to zoom out to 20mm is actually a really refreshing change from what is usually around a 24 to 28mm sort of focal range on most standard zoom lenses. Obviously, being a photographer that likes really shallow depth of field, the 3.5 to 5.6 variable aperture wouldn't be my first choice for a lens for something like a portrait shoot, and I'm really happy that they also sent me the 24 to 70 2.8 to try out. I will be making a full review on the 24 to 70 as well, so make sure you stay tuned for that. The 20 to 60 is a really nice vlogging lens. Because of that wider angle, you don't have to hold the camera super far from your face, and when you do hold the camera out like that, you can see quite a lot of the background. So I think it's really nice having a shot that shows off more of the background and it's not just all face. The face and body tracking works great, and I noticed that the face and eye tracking did a really great job of discerning which eye to focus on when taking photos of Amanda on the mountain. I did notice that the autofocus didn't work as well in all of the modes when shooting in the Vlog picture profile. So right now I'm shooting in the standard picture profile, and as you can see, hopefully see in the video, the autofocus does a really good job of tracking my face around the frame. I've just switched the camera over into Vlog and we'll do the same sort of test, just moving backwards and forwards. So hopefully you guys can see a little bit of a difference there in the autofocus performance, because I definitely did notice it. So I do need to do some more testing, but when I did switch over to the standard picture profile and shot some video, the autofocus performance was really great, and I was really surprised at how accurate and fast it was. So finally, I want to talk about the video quality, and for me this is one of the biggest advantages of the S5. The 4K quality coming out of the S5 is some of the best I've seen in a mirrorless camera, and the 1080p is also really nice. I was able to get the best results with the S&Q mode up to 120 frames per second in HD, but for my use, I wouldn't go any slower than 120, so 150 and 180 frames per second. You do notice a bit of a degradation in the quality of the video, but that's fairly normal because these are extremely fast frame rates. But the 120, I have to say, is very nice, very crisp and clear. So here are some things that I think can be improved on future iterations. In my opinion, I think the EVF could be a little bit larger and more clear. In my test, the responsiveness of the LCD and the EVF are really great, given it does have that 120 Hz refresh rate, but I feel like using the LCD was a much better experience than using the EVF. The EVF did seem a little bit smaller than what I'm used to, but I think it's just something I'm gonna have to become accustomed to, and it probably is just a compromise given how compact and lightweight the body of the S5 is. Just talking about that autofocus again, I did notice a little bit of difference when comparing the Vlog autofocus performance to the standard picture profiles. I'm wondering whether this is just an issue that I'm having or whether it's due to the lack of contrast in Vlog, because the S5 does use a contrast detect focus mode, because in the standard picture profiles, in my opinion, that face tracking works really, really well. So some things that I love most about the S5. I love that it has all of the most important features of the S1 line, but all packed into a smaller body. And I feel like they didn't even have to sacrifice the custom buttons and dials, which is the case a lot of times with these more compact mirrorless cameras. I've tried a lot of IBIS systems and I've never really been overly happy with the results when shooting video, but I'm confident this is the best IBIS system I've ever tried. Will it convert me from using a shoulder rig to going completely handheld? I would say not quite yet. I just really do like the look of that organic handheld movement in some of my shots, but if I was needing to get a steady shot completely handheld, I would say this is one of the only cameras I would actually trust. I love that the camera doesn't have a record limit, so unlike a lot of other mirrorless hybrid cameras, the S5 can just keep recording for however long your battery and SD card will last for, except when you shoot in the 10-bit mode. In the 10-bit mode, you do have a 30-minute time limit. The dynamic range of the sensor is unlike anything I've seen, and I would say this has to be my #1 favorite feature of the S5. Just knowing I have that level of flexibility in the camera if I do stuff up or if I do need to recover those shadows, the S5 is an amazing performer. I'm really looking forward to exploring more of the capabilities of this camera and taking it out and testing it in more environments, and I'm also really excited to get my hands on some more of those L mount Lumix lenses as well. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. There's going to be plenty more content coming on the S5. If you're interested, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below if you haven't already. I want to say a massive thank you also to Panasonic for sending me the camera and for sponsoring this video. And if you guys have any other questions, please leave them down in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.